Hello and welcome. I know this video is a little bit late. I was planning on having this out at the start of January, and January is almost over. But it is my top 10 favorite games from 2024. I don't have near as much time as I used to play video games. I work a lot more than I used to. But I still love playing them when I can. I haven't finished every game on this list. That's why it's not a official game of the year ranking and everything. 3 games I really wanted to beat that I didn't beat, and a bunch of other games that I did beat. So let's just go straight into it with the reminder that just because I didn't beat a game doesn't mean it can't be my favorite, but you are absolutely allowed to criticize me for it. So please roast me in the comments as much as you like. And just because I haven't finished the game yet doesn't mean I'm not going to. Some of the games that I didn't finish were really, really long RPGs that I wasn't streaming as part of the regular streaming schedule. And so I just haven't had time to put into them. But mostly because I've been trying to beat Trails Through Daybreak. But let's get into number 11. Honorable mention, I guess, but I had to talk about it. I had to give it its props, is Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2 was like a phenomenon, right? People that I hadn't played games with in the longest time I was playing with. My dad and I were playing Helldivers 2 together. You know, my wife and I were playing Helldivers 2 together. It was just an absolute blast with friends. And when they added the mechs, that was cool. You know, just even solo, it was really, really fun still. Going around the map, shooting bugs, shooting robots, going to Malevolent Creek and being a part of all that. You know, it was like an experience for a little while there, right? And I know they've done a lot to fix it, absolutely. I haven't gone back to play it. I've re-downloaded it, I just haven't. The moment's passed, right? And I don't want it to be that way. I don't want it to stay that way. I want to go back to it. But, and I really do think the devs have learned from what they did, but it just became such a chore to play Helldivers when the enemies only got stronger and all of my weapons only got weaker and all of my favorite weapons got worse all the time. It just became a bummer. And I think that's where I wound up with Helldivers 2. That's why it couldn't make the top 10, even though it has some incredible memories for me throughout the year. Playing with my friend Remas and being barely able to keep my eyes open because I'd taken medicine because I had the flu, and I bombed our position, you know, and killed us both, and we failed the mission. Playing with my wife and her sniping me from a good little distance away because she was aiming at something else, and I guess I just got in the way. Playing with my dad and having him laugh as we're trying to run away from a charger. You know, those are memories that are going to stay with me forever, especially the one with my dad. And I wish we still had fun playing this game when we stopped, because even if I started playing again right now, I'm not going to be able to get all those people to download it again and play it with me, you know? The time has passed. And so even though I have some incredibly fond memories with it, I just can't bring myself to put it in the top 10. It would have felt wrong not to mention it here, so that's why I had to. Because I do think it's one of my favorite games of the year. I'm going to mention later in this video that there was a different game that gripped me in a way with multiplayer. The multiplayer is not why Helldivers gripped me. It's just a part of it, right? It's not like a multiplayer game that I just wanted to play multiplayer with. And it was just, like I said, the experience of Helldivers 2 that absolutely won me over. And I really loved the first game. I really loved the second game. And maybe one day I'll love it again. But unfortunately, I walked away from Helldivers 2 pretty bummed. And so that's why it's number 11 on this list. Number 10. Number 10 is a game that I did beat. Unicorn Overlord. Unicorn Overlord is a really, really interesting strategy game. Lots of characters, lots of battles to do. I do think the game might be a little too long in places, especially by the time you get to the 4th continent. You basically already have your teams figured out. You can't get any more units to throw in there, even though you have more characters coming in, and it feels kind of frustrating in that regard. But the actual core loop of the game is really, really satisfying. Using your units, building the best units and tweaking them to be able to maximize their effectiveness with the characters that you love, and then sending them in there to go destroy enemy armies. Very quickly, as the maps get bigger, you find that flying units and mounted units are incredibly overpowered, but you also have, to kind of circumvent the problem that you get with like Fire Emblem, right? You have teleportation abilities that allow you to teleport units across the map, and you have a few other things that let you get people where they're going quickly so that even your footlock units can still be really strong. I do really like that you get to pick who you want Elaine to marry, and there's a ton of options. Personally, I feel like some of the fun character interactions from the rapport system stops after you give somebody the Ring of the Unicorn, and that's kind of a shame. I would have liked a few more scenes here and there capitalized on it. I chose Ridial because she's awesome and because she's wonderful, but it was legitimately a tough choice. And I really like the cast in this game. I really, really do. If I was to give out Best Cast as an award this year, I might have given it runner-up to Unicorn Overlord. There is a cast in here that I think is stronger, but at the same time, I really, really liked this game. There's a lot of busy work between doing all the optional side content, which I did, doing all of the mines and things like that, which I did. There are other games on this list that I liked more that I should have spent that time doing instead, I think, and that's probably why I feel like it's kind of padded out some, because ultimately there were other games I wish I had put some of that time into and maybe just finished the main story of Unicorn Overlord faster. But I did go back and do all the side content after you beat the game, got all the characters, and I don't really regret it. I think I would have preferred maybe putting that time into Like a Dragon or Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. But ultimately, I did still have an absolute blast with Unicorn Overlord, and I'm glad that I completed it, right? Wonderful game, and if you're looking for a great game in the Vanillaware lineup, you should check it out because it's very, very good. Number 9 for me is Megaton Musashi W Wired. Megaton Musashi W Wired is such a weird, fun ride. I beat the whole game on stream. This was crazy. There were times that I absolutely was loving this game. And then there were times where I was like, what are we doing? Why is this the choice you made? No, stop it. Ultimately, I loved the ride. I think some of the character beats are incredible. I think the action is really solid. I wish the combat system was a little bit deeper, but I had a couple different games that are on this list that gave me more of a deeper combat system for mech games this year. But when it comes down to it, it was just a blast. A great callback to older anime, older Super Robot anime, I guess you could say, in the way the characters interact with each other. The fact that it's based on an anime itself and basically tells you the anime story. There are entire sections that are just cutscenes straight out of the anime, which is cool. There are also some really odd story beats that happen as it gets closer to the end because, it's based on a Super Robot anime, and you're either going to get grounded, rough and tough, real robot, or you're going to get Super Robot. And in those two genres, you're either going to get very, grounded, serious story, or, hey, aliens are here now and they're doing stuff. And the same way with Super Robots as well, right? You're going to get a very serious, gritty story, or you're going to get anything can happen. And that's kind of what happens here. Anything can happen. Characters have arcs that grow them into different people, and they make very different choices than they would have made at first. And I loved that. There are some of the characters in here, my chat and I both adored. Sarzant is incredible. His little Kyun Maid Cafe. I can't do it very well with my hands. I'm really bad at making a heart with my hands. But just love him. And then we had incredible characters like Date, and it's just such a cool cast of characters. Again, wouldn't win Best Cast. Can't win Best Mech Game, unfortunately, for this year. But still really liked the cast a whole lot. Arsham was an incredible character. And I think by the end of the game, even some of the weirder choices I wound up really liking, but there were definitely some very strange choices in this game. Megaton Musashi W Wired is absolutely worth playing in my mind, but again, go into it knowing that the vast majority of the combat is going to be just attack. It's not going to be much deeper than that. Use your super move when it becomes available, and those super moves are so cool that I kind of don't care that it's not deeper. Wonderful game. I think I forgot to hold up 9 fingers for that, but 9. Number 8 is actually 2 games. And I'm going to choose these 2 games because neither of them are fully released yet, right? Path of Exile 2 is in early access, and Granvir is effectively in early access, right? You can't just go get it right now, but you can get keys by going to the developer's Discord, and you can play it early through that as they continue to tweak the game and add new things. But I wanted to highlight these two here because both of them I would have put in the number 8 slot, and because I really, really like both of them, but I'm also kind of just waiting for the finished version, right? Path of Exile 2, I have 30 hours into. I really, really love Path of Exile 2, but I have some big problems with it. And the first one is that I played a warrior to start with. That was my class. That was my go-to. Melee, warrior at least, melee, is kind of rough in Path of Exile 2. And they've made some changes already to try and fix it. And I think that by the time the game is fully done and all the classes are in there, warrior's probably going to feel great, right? But between a mix of low attack speed and abilities that reduce your attack speed to make you hit harder, and then armor kind of being worse in every way than energy shield and dodging than evasion, right? It just made for a really rough experience. I re-rolled a ranger and I re-rolled a witch and had a really good time with both of them. And then I tried a mercenary and I tried a monk, and you know, it's good. It's very, very good. It's very, very addictive. I find myself very often whenever I boot it up going, I could finish this map out real quick. I just grind out all this map, find some cool gear, move forward, and then before I know it, I've been playing for 2 or 3 hours. Very, very solid game. In that same way, Granvir is a very cool, very deep mech game where you pick up parts as you go along and you have to try and make it to the fortress by choosing your path through a map and collecting gear. I made a full video on Granvir. I'll link that in the description if you want to go check it out. But absolutely a killer mech game. I think it's one that we'll be talking about for a very long time once it's had its full release. A couple things in there that I wish were a little different, but again, it's not done yet. And so even though I think both of these games ate up a large chunk of my year, I can't put them any higher on this list because they're not finished yet. I specifically am really excited to see the later levels of Granvir. And like I said, I'm in the Discord. I can see some of the stuff that's getting teased. I don't want to bring it up here because it's not all public yet, but there's some cool stuff coming. And then with Path of Exile 2, I really want to play the Huntress. I want to throw javelins at people. That sounds cool. And I really want to see what they add later on. I haven't yet got a character to the end game of Path of Exile 2 because, like I said, I got my warrior almost all the way there, got to a specific area of the game that penalizes you for getting hit when I'm playing a slow, burly, tanky warrior, and kind of stopped playing for a couple weeks and then picked it back up again on a ranger and then a witch. But I'll get a character in-game, whether before the first big league comes out or after. But either way, I'm very excited to play more of that game and to play more Granvir. Number 7 is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And I can't put it any higher because I didn't finish it, right? I don't know how it ends, and please do not spoil it for me. I've played the original 7. I want to see how this goes. I want to see where it goes. I just haven't got to finish it yet. I'm over halfway in at this point, and I've loved every second of playing it. There has not been a moment where I have not been having fun playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. There are other games on this list that I have complaints with, but I don't have any of those with Rebirth. Every fight, every exploration area, getting the little chocobos and patting them on the head and picking up the sign, it's so good. All the little moments in the gameplay are amazing, and then you have how great it looks, how wonderful the music is, how great the characters are, but it's really hard for me to rate it higher, first off, because I didn't finish it, second off, because I already know these characters, right? Yes, they've got some new quirks about them, but they're not brand new to me, and that's also why I can't give Best Cast to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, even though I absolutely really like some of the side characters that have been introduced. Well, I really, really want to finish this one. Not as much as I want to finish the next one, but I really, really want to finish this one. And I just need to get through Trails because Trails Through Daybreak 2 is coming out on Valentine's Day. And it's almost here already. So please don't feel like I'm trying to slight Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. The fact that it's above games that I did finish should tell you that I really did love it. I just can't let myself put it any higher on this top 10. But best music by far. Number 6. Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, which, again, for the same reason as 7, cannot go any higher on this list. I did not finish it yet. I'm maybe a third of the way through, I believe. I just finished the Sujiman Island side quest. I was given advice when I first was playing this game that once I got to the island, I needed to do the entire island side quest all the way through before I go back to the main quest. And that was a mistake. That killed the momentum of the story for me, killed a lot of my desire to go back. I have gone back and started working back through it again. Like I said, if I wasn't trying to beat Trails Through Daybreak before Trails Through Daybreak 2 comes out, I would have already been trying to beat Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. I love Kasuga Ichiban. I love Kazuma Kiryu. The Yakuza series is very, very special to me, and I absolutely adore it. And so I clearly want to go back and finish it. I just haven't had time. And like I said, I spent 15 hours just doing the island side quest. And if you're listening to this and you haven't yet played Infinite Wealth, yeah, if you do the whole island, you get a lot of money. You get a lot of money. I don't recommend doing it all at once. Do it in chunks and go back to the main story. Especially because the game gives you the option to leave way earlier. And I just didn't take it because I wanted to do what I was recommended to do. Yeah, sure, I'll do the whole thing. And it's a good story. It really is. But it killed the pacing for me a lot. All that aside, I love the Sujimon collecting. I didn't talk about Queen's Blood with 7. Oh, Queen's Blood's so good. Anyway, save that for the full video on 7 whenever I beat it. I love the Sujimon. I love collecting them. I spent way too long doing that before I even got to the island. And, just do the story's so good. The music's so good. The characters are so good. I really want to see where the rest of this one goes. So, again, please no spoilers, especially because we're about to have the Majima game coming out. I don't have time. Anyway, I work 3 jobs, man. I want to have the time. I really do. I may wind up taking some time off regular uploads just to try and beat some of these games. But anyway, wonderful, wonderful game. Absolutely love it. Number 5. I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for where this game is on the list, but it's the best mech game of the year, in my opinion. Gundam Breaker 4. I had the easy slam dunk, just put it in 4. It's 4 for Gundam Breaker 4. It would have been fine. But I have to be honest with myself and with you, dear viewer, and unfortunately, it is number 5 for me. Gundam Breaker 4 is a game that I've been looking forward to for a very, 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 very long time. Gundam Breaker 3 is a game that I have over 600 hours in. It's one of 2 games that I have over 600 hours in. I guess technically I probably have more than that in Final Fantasy as well. But regardless, it's one of the few games that I have that much time. I adore Gundam Breaker 3. And Gundam Breaker 4 is very good in a lot of ways. It is a very solid mech game. It's got some really solid combat. It just isn't the step forward for the series that I wanted it to be. The customization is great. There's so much more customization you can do. I made a bird. You know what I mean? That's incredible. And I beat this game almost 3 times. I beat it once by myself, once on stream, and then almost another full time getting footage. And after playing it that many times, I just don't want to play it anymore. And I didn't have that problem with Gundam Breaker 3. Part of it is the story. I think the story is very weak in Gundam Breaker 4. And there are characters in it that I really like, absolutely. But as a whole, I think the story is weak. Especially because by the end of it, the characters I'm supposed to care about, I kind of didn't. And the characters that I wasn't supposed to care much about at all, I really do. Especially returning characters from Gundam Breaker 3 that, I wanted to focus more on them and what was going on with them than I did on this new cast. Because this new cast, unfortunately, isn't given a lot of time to shine. There's a lot of talking. They talk a lot. But there's not a lot of actual plot progression, unfortunately. Each of them get their own little mini arc, right? And some of them I like more than others. But by the end of it, I just kind of didn't care. As the cutscenes got longer, and longer, as characters just talked and talked and talked about things that I don't think we needed to have everybody's opinion on. The story is a big negative for me in Gundam Breaker 4, and I wish that was the only one, but there's a couple other relatively big negatives for me, and I'll do a full review on it at some point. Right now, the review would be way more negative than I want it to be, because I do really like this. It's still number 5 for me. It's above Like a Dragon and Final Fantasy VII and Path of Exile 2 and Megaton and Unicorn Overlord, you know? Because I do really love the combat. I love the customization. I love what I can do with this game. I love all the time that I spent playing with friends with this game. It just, at the end of the day, funnels are not as fun as they were in Gunnerbreaker 3. Option parts are not as fun as they were in Gunnerbreaker 3. The combat is not as fun as it was in Gunnerbreaker 3. You can go back and listen to me at the beginning of the release of the game talking about how I think this game replaces Gunnerbreaker 3 for me because I love the combat. At the time, I was under the impression there would be a bunch of unique movesets for individual weapons. There's a lot of them, but there's not near as many as there needs to be. A lot of the individual weapons share movesets. And so by the end of the game, especially after 3 playthroughs, you're kind of just using the same combos over and over, right? I want to like this game more than I do. I really, truly do. I love Gundam. You can't see it because of the green screen, but there are so many model kits up there. I love Gundam. And this is infinitely better than New Gundam Breaker, right? It absolutely is. Don't miss it. It's number 5 for the entire year out of all the games I played. And I may not beat a lot of games, but I played a lot of games. But it just unfortunately has too many negatives for me to put it up higher. I could see myself going back and doing another full playthrough of Gundam Breaker 3 and not even have any negative feeling for it. But if you ask me today, hey, do you want to stream another full playthrough of Gundam Breaker 4? Not really. I have filled up my library of customized suits on both PlayStation and on PC. And I don't really want to make more. You know, I've made Gal Gaigar in there. I've made a Scope Dog in there. And it's wonderful. But I just don't have any great desire to keep going with it. And that sucks, because I love Gundam Breaker 3. And I love Gundam Breaker 4. It just has more negatives than 3 did. And in some ways, I think it might even have more negatives than 2 did for me. But will I play it again? Yeah, at some point. You know, I still really love the combat in that game. I just wish there was some more variety. And if it gets another wave of DLC at some point, I'll go back and play it for sure. But if this is all we get for it, then it's all we get for it, you know? I'm hoping Gundam Breaker 5 will be a step closer to 3, even though, again, Gundam Breaker 4 was a huge step away from New Gundam Breaker, and that's already something to praise it for. So please don't feel like I'm just talking bad about it today. Well, after that, number 4 is going to get me into some hot water. Space Marine 2. If you're a fan of this channel, you know that I love Warhammer. That's probably not a surprise. Space Marine 2, even not Warhammer, is just a really fun time. I have not put that much time into a multiplayer in a long time. And I love playing Bulwark in Space Marine 2. Running up, healing my buddies, bringing a shield up, bashing people with it. It is so much fun. And that's not to count the operations mode that lets you do cool like little mini campaign levels, which you can do with friends. And then the campaign itself, which is super cool. The attention to detail is amazing. Getting to see, I almost spoiled something, getting to see enemy types from across the actual like 40K universe in this game. They look great. Their size is right. They're so cool. And then, of course, getting to further the story of Titus and what's going on with him. Great new characters introduced with Chiron. Just absolutely wonderful. And Gadriel, of course. Let me not forget him. But, no, just absolutely a blast to play. I think this is the kind of game you can play even if you don't like the Warhammer universe. But if you do, you really probably should play it. But the multiplayer alone, I think, is worth playing. And I say that as somebody that hasn't touched a multiplayer mode like that in a very, very long time. Just so much fun to use the power sword, the thunder hammer, to hear the bolter, to be able to use a melt-a-gun. It's just so good. And I don't really have that many complaints with it. I might have liked a few more enemy types being put in the game. But guess what? They're adding more enemy types already. So, you know, great. It's just really, really cool. And at the end of the day, sometimes I want just a spectacle that's cool. Sometimes I want just a multiplayer game that's fun. And this has both. So yeah, I really love Space Marine 2. Some of you will say, well, it's because I'm a fanboy for Warhammer. Look, I can't say much. They're not here in the office with me, but well, some of them are. I have bits from Warhammer models in this room from where I was kit bashing earlier. You know, I can't say much. Number 3, and it was very close between number 3 and number 2. I'm going to complain a lot about number 2, I'm sure. So it might honestly seem like I love number 3 more than I love number 2. I do have some complaints with number 3 as well. But number 3 for me is Elden Ring Shadow of the Erd Tree. I think it would be really easy for me to switch number 3 and number 2, and on different days, they're in different spots. And as I'm talking about it right now, I do feel like I might be leaning more towards Shadow of the Erd Tree than number 2. But either way, I've put it at number 3. We're going to leave it there. If in your heart you think it's ridiculous that it's at number 3 and it should be higher up, just switch 2 and 3 and you'll be fine. But Shadow of the Erd Tree is absolutely breathtaking. It is beautiful. It is wonderful. It is exploration. I brag so much about Elden Tree is what I was about to say. Elden Ring for that exploration. It's one of my favorite aspects about the game. Everywhere I went in that first playthrough, I was always finding something new. The problem being, I finished that first playthrough. I found everything. I beat every boss. There was no more new things to find. There was no more new exploration. And I've been really tinkering around with the idea of doing a randomizer run, but I haven't done it yet, right? And so I wanted something new, and that's what Erd Tree is. There are some issues with it, for sure. But on the whole, it's just exploration. Finding cool new things, figuring out how to take down tough opponents, figuring out how to deal with the environmental struggles, right? Figuring out how to get into specific places, figuring out what the right routes are, and finding all of those scatter tree fragments to be able to get bigger and stronger, to be able to take on all of these foes that live in this world, this land of gloom and sorrow as their god has abandoned them, right? Just such a cool place to explore and so many interesting things to find, right? A whole forest that has very few enemies in it, but the enemies that are there, some of them at least, are very, very hard to kill. And you almost have to become like a stealth segment of the game, right? All leading up into a mysterious manor with a bunch of cool stuff in there. There's dragons, mountains, and a great lead up there to one of the best boss fights in the series, not just because it's a great fight, but because if you summon the NPC, it's the most memorable fight in this expansion. You have some terrible fights in this expansion too, in my opinion. Commander Gaius, hate that fight. It's just not fun for me. Maybe I just need to do it more to get better at it, but I've done it only once so far, and maybe I need to do it a second. I would say only once. I fought him many times to get that one kill, but there's a couple of reused bosses that I think maybe don't need to be reused as much as they are. That's kind of frustrating. Not from like a, hey, I can't kill them angle, but just from a like, hey, I'm exploring this cool new area. I thought that was a unique boss. Why is it here again? You know? And then, of course, the final boss, a little too much, I think. Just a little bit too much. I beat him. I did it. But just a little bit too much. And From thought so too, because right after I beat him, they nerfed him. I haven't fought him again since the nerfs. I still think he might be too much, but you know, and I did it, so I guess it's not impossible. It's not too much. You know, I don't necessarily love the main boss, the final boss of main Elden Ring either. And I do think it's a really weird decision to put the DLC as far into Elden Ring as it is, because I would like to replay the entire game with stuff I get from the DLC, and I just can't do that unless there are mods now that let you do that. That let you skip straight to Erd Tree. But there is just something about sitting back in my chair and going, right? I find ruins that as I go further down, I find more and more ancient murals and things like that, and ancient architecture, and there's these strange creatures down here, and when I reach the bottom, I find the core mystery of this world, right? Just down in the depths, scaling a castle to assault the leader of the castle, right? Those are things that I can't put words as to why I love so much, but that I think Shadow of the Erdtree absolutely knocks it out of the park with. Some of the new weapons are super cool. There's a sunflower hammer. Yeah! I love Shadow of the Erdtree. Unfortunately, there are parts of it that are really, really empty. And I think that emptiness tells a story in and of itself, right? That you could get really philosophical with it. But there are parts of it that they just, especially the finger ruins, they just don't feel necessarily like they're worth exploring. You have that one big moment at the bottom of them, and then, you know, there's just a bunch of really annoying enemies around, and there's not much more to do there. You know, and I'm not saying that every area needs to have cool stuff to do, but in most of these areas, there is, like, when you finish them, there is a feeling of like, man, I have scoured this abandoned section of the world, and I found all that there is to find in it, and now I have all the knowledge that there is to hold in it. All the puzzle pieces are before me. And when you reach the end of those, it's like, oh, I don't know what's going on here. And you have to do a very convoluted quest to find the answers for it, which I did. Convoluted quests are not a new thing in this series. I'm not complaining just because of that. I just think there are some things that are kind of rough in Shadow of the Erdtree. And there are other things that make it sometimes my favorite game of the year, you know? And it is a DLC. It's an expansion. It's not the only one of those in this list. But ultimately, I could very easily go either way for Shadow of the Erdtree and my number 2 entry. And I think that stands like to the strength of Shadow of the Erdtree, because my number 2 entry is a game that I love with all my heart. And I think Shadow of the Erdtree could have been even better, right? But when I think about good DLC in the Souls franchise, Shadow of the Erdtree is up there for me. It is really hard for me not to consider it a standalone, and I kind of wish it had its own launch from the start menu to be able to go straight into Shadow of the Erdtree with a new character, because I think that would be phenomenal. And if it did, it would probably be number 2 without question, you know? But no, I really, really like it. I think if there weren't quite so many reused bosses, I don't know, I feel like I'm reaching for things that I don't like about it, right? But my biggest complaint really is like the finger ruins and a couple areas like that are super cool, but kind of empty. There's one that's like that on purpose, right? And I say that as if they all aren't, but it doesn't have tons of enemies in it. It doesn't have a bunch of other stuff in it. It's there for 2 things that you find in there, and those tell the story, and it's incredible. You know, the vistas in Shadow of the Erdtree are beautiful. The areas you go to are super cool, and most of the bosses you fight are great. And then you fight some of those same bosses like 4 more times. It's not 4. It's only 1 other for one of them and like 2 other for another one. Man, I don't know. I really like Shadow of the Erdtree. I think the further away I get from it, the more I like it, and the more I'm probably just going to download a mod to be able to go straight into it from base Elden Ring, because I do really love exploring Erdtree. Like, Miquella's domain is just so cool. I wish that final boss was better. I wish a couple of the other bosses either didn't get reused or were better. But some of those bosses are some of the best fights in the series. I'm trying not to name names here, but there is one boss fight in particular I'm thinking of that is absolutely incredible. Maybe you'll be at the end of this and saying, you know, I can't believe he put DLC this high up in the list. But ultimately, man, I love it. Shadow of the Erdtree was absolutely exceptional. And I wish I could play it blind again, much like the base game. I wish I could go through it for the first time all over again. Because it's one of those experiences that I don't think I'm ever going to forget. Number 2 for me is Final Fantasy XIV Dawn Trail. An expansion is number 2. I want it to be higher, and for a lot of people, it might even be lower. But on the whole, I still loved Dawn Trail. And I do think in some ways it's a step back from things like Shadowbringers and Endwalker. But in other ways, I think there are still some incredible strengths to show off here. I don't want to just start naming characters for spoiler's sake, but a certain knight is a huge highlight in here. I love where this story goes. I think that is really cool, and the final zone is one of my favorite zones in all of Final Fantasy XIV. Maybe in all of MMOs, right? It's just such a cool zone. What you have to do there is good. Now, again, I have some complaints. If I didn't, it would be number one, right? But despite those problems and the fact that I think that a certain character is pushed a little bit too hard, I know a lot of people think it's way too hard. I will say a little bit too hard because I do like that character. I should specify I liked that character in the patches before the expansion a lot more than I liked that character in the expansion. But either way, I do still like that character. There are other characters that didn't get time to shine really at all. I mean, they're in the trailer. I'll talk about them. But like Kryl, this was supposed to be her expansion, right? And she kind of just gets sidelined until almost the very end. There are characters like Thancred and Urianger kind of just drop off. And then characters that are with you for a lot of the expansion that don't really do any. Alice and Alfino, two of my favorite characters in the entire story, kind of just are there, you know? And that's a shame. There's so much more that could have been done there. But I do still really like the villains. Bakul Jaja is one of the best additions to this game from the entire expansion, in my opinion. He's a wonderful character. And then you have people like Galul Jaja that I think are really cool as well. I loved going around Tuliholal and learning about all of these cultures. I'm a huge lore buff. I have the lore books, you know? I loved learning about each of these different peoples and trying to understand how they work and all the side quests that let you spend more time with them. I don't think all of it was super successful. I think especially like in Ikbrox, there's some stuff there that is kind of rough. But by the end of it, I think it's really, really good story-wise. Lore-wise, story-wise, right? Besides all that, I love the dungeons. I love the trials. I love the new classes. Pictomancer and Viper both are such a blast to play, and Viper's become my main. I adore playing Viper. That is such a fun class to play. I like a lot of the new skills that jobs have been given. Don't like all of them. Some of them have been reworked in really strange ways. In a weird way, I think like Astrologian and Dark Knight are the big examples. Astrologian is maybe now the strongest that it's ever been, but I don't love the new like, hey, we wanted to reduce button bloat for cards. Now you have 4 buttons to push for cards instead of 3. And Dark Knight just feels kind of weak compared to the others. It still does like good damage. It just feels kind of weak compared to the others. Maybe it's because I don't have it at 100 yet. I only have 6 classes at 100 so far, and I'm working my way up for the others. But I love the world of Tuliholal. I love the stories in it, and I love the places that the story goes. A lot of the new NPCs that are introduced are great. I just didn't love some aspects of the main story. I think some of the stuff that happens with Wuklamat and with Sphene are kind of unfortunate when I could see them being so much better so easily. But I do still like both of those characters. I just don't love those 2 characters. And it's really hard to make me hate a character. Like, anybody that doesn't pay attention to Warhammer won't understand this, but I love Lucius the Eternal. He is the biggest jerk. The second biggest jerk in that universe, right? And if we take, like, 14, for example, I love La Habrea. La Habrea is a huge jerk. It's hard to make me not love a character. And I kind of don't love Wuklamat. Kind of don't love Sphene. I think there are some really good villains in here. I think there's some cool character moments in here. Specifically, like I said, Wuklamat gets a couple really good ones that I really liked. There's just other characters that I liked more that got sidelined. And that was unfortunate. The story was supposed to be one way and it wasn't, right? And I think we could say that about a lot of the expansions in 14, but almost always that's worked for me, right? I know a lot of people are mad about Stormblood, but the changes to Stormblood where it goes a different way than what you expect, I loved that. I still love that story more than I love the original story, and there are people that are going to be very mad because I said that. I think that for what it's worth, the original story of Stormblood should have been the focus, absolutely. But I really like what we got with the diversion and where it goes and everything. I wish when we come back from that diversion, the stuff there was better. But no, I really like Dawn Trail. I'm still playing Dawn Trail. I'm still enjoying Dawn Trail. I just don't have the same feeling for it that I had for like Endwalker or Shadowbringers, you know? I think that we've hit a point where those are such high peaks. It's really hard for Dawn Trail or maybe anything ever to reach that peak again, you know? But I do think there were some missteps here. And I think the fact that when you look at the script numbers, I need to just do a full Dawn Trail video at some point and stop talking about it here. But when you look at the script numbers, a certain character's name being said almost more than every other character is spoken for the entire game. Like, it's a lot. It's a whole lot. And I think that character deserved better than the treatment that she got in this expansion. I think she had some really great moments. Again, I don't hate her. I still like her. But I think she absolutely deserved better than some of the moments that she got. There's one big one that stands out to me that is really bad. But, okay. I'm going to save the rest of this for the review. But my biggest issue with Wook Lamont is that she supposedly loves her people. That they're the most important thing to her. But she doesn't know anything about them. It feels like there should have been either have the Warrior of Light be the POV character where Wook Lamont gets to, as someone who loves her people, explain all of these different cultures to you, or have that be an important part of the story where the fact that she didn't know anything about them means that maybe she didn't love them as much as she thought. That maybe, you know, she needs to confront her own, you know, ignorance. And instead, she does confront her own ignorance, absolutely, but it's more of a, you know, so I've just got to learn. And there's some benefit to that, you know, hey, I got to overcome my obstacles kind of character that puts on a brave face and tries to hide everything. I do, like I said, think there's some really good Wook Lamont moments in this story. But it's really hard for me to reconcile the fact that she loves these people, but she hasn't even asked her friend that is of the Pelu Pelu how the Pelu Pelu work. That a guy that just got off the ship, I need to save this for the video, but a guy that just got off the ship from Ishgard knows more about the Moblins than Wook Lamont does. Anyway, if you love Dawn Trail as well, because I still do, it's number 2 on this list, please don't take this as me just bashing it, because there are absolutely a ton of things to love about it. The zones are really cool, the music's great, I adore the cowboy adventure, and the final zone is wonderful. But I do have a lot of criticisms with the story, and I think had I finished 7 Rebirth and Like a Dragon Infinite, I might have moved Dawn Trail down and them up, but I still really enjoyed what I got. I think we have come a long way still from like Heavensward and ARR writing, right? I just think there were some big missteps here that hopefully we don't see in the future. It feels like almost some stuff got derailed and rewritten, and I don't know that. I'm no expert, but that's almost what it feels like, right? Anyway, that's enough about Dawn Trail. I've complained about Dawn Trail more than I complained about Gunnerbreaker 4. On to number 1. Many of you will have seen this coming. It is Trails Through Daybreak. I know I haven't finished it. You throw your apples, throw your bananas, throw your tomatoes. Why would you throw... Actually, why would I say apples and bananas? That's not the point. Throw your tomatoes. I haven't finished it. I'm almost done with chapter 4. I'm well over halfway at this point. But there's no way it can be anything but Trails Through. Trails Through Daybreak is slow. Trails Through Daybreak is very, very slow. It takes its time. Making sure you understand the world, making sure you understand the people, making sure you understand the culture. But it needed to be. We've never been to Calvard. We've only heard about Calvard over the course of the series. And if you're a fan of this channel, you know that I love the Trails series. So you probably expected to see this where it is anyway. But Van, Arkride, and the whole motley crew around with him are incredible. I love Van. Wonderful main character. And such a great window into Calvard, right? Spriggan that doesn't follow the code of the guild, doesn't necessarily always follow the law, but he's also not as bad as the Society or Armada or anything like those either. He's just trying to make it through the world, you know, just trying to make it by day. Absolutely wonderful character. And at the end of the day, I think that Van will probably be, once I finish all of this arc, probably be in my top 5 Trails character. Because I already feel like I love him as much as I love like Rufus or maybe even Randy. He's just such a good character. And just the kind of guy that wants, like, will put himself in harm's way for anybody, of course. Then, of course, you have the rest of the cast. I haven't even met all of the cast yet, so maybe it's a little premature to give them best cast and best story. But, you know, just, I guess I shouldn't spoil the rest of the cast by talking about each of them here. I'll do a full review of Trails Through Daybreak when I finish it. But just wonderful cast, wonderful story, wonderful music, wonderful world. Getting to explore Calvard and truly, like, learn what Calvard is like. Seeing the advancement of technology in Calvard and the moving forward that we've seen already from Reverie and things like that. Orbital cars being everywhere and the stuff that comes up because of that. There's just so much good in this game. And the combat is really good. At first, I kind of hated it. At first, I wanted to go back to the combat of the previous games. But I've really come around on it now. Starting with the action combat and then deploying shards to be able to go into the turn-based combat. It's actually really intuitive, really solid, especially with like perfect dodges and things like that. It's really fun. I kind of wish a lot of the older games had this combat now, and thankfully, you know, remaking Sky, I think that's what it's going to have, it seems like from the trailers. But ultimately, a lot of people are going to say, well, of course he chose Trails, he's a Trails fanboy. But I'm a fanboy for other stuff on this list too. Final Fantasy, Yakuza, Like a Dragon, sorry. Do that every time. Gundam, Warhammer, you know? So it's not just, hey, I'm a Trails fan, and so that's why it's number one. It's, I legitimately think, even though I haven't beaten it yet, and I, again, publicly will say that, I still think this is my favorite game of 2024. I'm really looking forward to a lot of the stuff that's coming out this next year. I'm going to date this video now by saying that as of the time this video is being recorded tonight, I'm trying out Dynasty Wars Origins for the first time. So I think there'll be a lot of cool games coming out next year, but also I beg you to understand that if next year I also haven't beaten any like 10 full games, please understand that I really want to be beating games. I just don't have the time. I didn't mention Path of Exile 1 on here. I put like 40 hours into Path of Exile 1 getting ready for Path of Exile 2 this year, and maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should have put it into one of these other games I didn't beat. You know, I could do that all day, saying, you know, well, I should have done this or should have done that. You can't change the past. So please, if you're angry at me, let me know in the comment section down below. I've tried to be as transparent as possible about the games I didn't beat. This is just my personal favorite games. Not trying to be objective with it here. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What were your 10 favorite games of the year, even though this one wound up being 11? And which games are you most looking forward to next year? Sorry again that it's so late, but hopefully this year won't be late like last year's was. Until next time, I've been Trey. This has been The Full Spectrum. Remember to always enjoy the full spectrum, the video game.